Okay, this is 1.5 student notes for trig and inverse values, and you are going to get to use your calculator, so if you don't have that out, go ahead and retrieve your calculator. All right, the first thing we're going to look at is plugging in calculator values in degree mode. So we're going to round everything to 3 decimal places, and we're going to do that all year long. So we're going to plug in cosine of 39 degrees. So let's go to our calculator value. And let's go to mode first of all, because we need to make sure that everything is in degree mode. So go to mode, and let's scroll over to degree, and I want you to press enter so that it is in degree. And then let's clear out of that. Now to press in cosine of 39, it's as easy as you want it to be. Press cosine and 39. And let's go ahead and close our parentheses so we get used to doing that. And press enter. Rounding to 3 decimal places, it looks like it's 0.777. And it's as easy as that. Okay, I want you to go back to your calculator and I want you to press in sine of 212 degrees. And you should get a negative value of 0.53. And the 0 is actually not going to matter, but let's go ahead and plug that in or write that down for 3 decimal places. Okay, so for cotangent, if you notice that button is not on your calculator, so if cotangent is 56 degrees, in order to get tangent, I know that I need to do the reciprocal. So cotangent is 56, so the reciprocal would be tangent of 56 degrees. Because remember, cotangent and tangent are reciprocals. I'm going to go ahead and write down the rest of these. Secant is secant of 245. What is the reciprocal of secant? Well, the reciprocal is cosine of 245. And what is the reciprocal of cosecant? And that would be sine. And those are just reciprocals. Okay, I'm going to plug one of these in for you. So I'll plug in C. So the reciprocal of cotangent of 56, I simply just go 1 divided by, and you can press in tangent of 56 degrees and close my parentheses. Rounding to 2 decimal places, 3, would be 0.675. And my answer is 0.675. And you can plug in these others too as well, and you should get negative 0.2366. Finding the reciprocal of cosecant should be 1.21. Okay, now this is something that you may or may not have seen. It says theta is equal to the arc sine of x. Still means that you're looking for an angle whose sine is x. These all mean the same thing. If I say sine of theta is x or theta is arc sine, anytime you see that little -1, that means arc sine. So all of these mean the same thing. I'm looking for the arc sine. So you're looking for an angle. This is basically the answer. So what angle gave me this answer? You're still in degree mode. You're still using your calculator. So the easiest thing here is I'm plugging it straight into my calculator. So I'm going to go back to my calculator and plug this in. Okay. So if you notice above, you've got your arcs here. So all I'm going to do is do secant cosine and plug in my decimal. It was 0.619. Close my parentheses. And what angle gave me that? Well, it was 51.75, blah, blah, blah. And it said round to 3 decimal places again. So 51.757. So my theta, or my angle that gave me 1, that is 51.757. And I'm going to say degrees. About 52 degrees gave me this decimal. Now remember, this says arctan. It's the same thing as saying tan with a -1. That's still arctan. So go to your calculator. What angle gave me 2.471? Plug that into your calculator, and you should get 67.967 degrees. Okay, unlike the section above, this is going to be totally different. I cannot take the inverse of the secant of 3.1. Okay, so since the arc secant is 3.1, I'm going to say, what is the cosine of this number? If secant is this, what is the cosine? So I'm taking the inverse. So what is the inverse of this number? And since I've already taken the inverse, so the inverse is going to be the reciprocal, which is 1 over 3.156. So this is where you take the reciprocal of the number. Okay, so secant is 3 points, so cosine is going to be 1 over. If arc cosecant is 1.9, then sine or arc sine is going to be 1 over. And if you notice, I never put the arcs underneath. They have to stand alone. If cotangent, and remember another way to write this is theta equals arc cotangent of 0.684. If arc cotangent is 0.684, then what is arc tangent? Remember, arc tangent is the reciprocal, or 1 over 0.684. Okay, and I'm going to plug in the first one for you. So I'm going to plug in the cosine. So you're going to say arc cosine, and then 1 over 3.156. And enter. And that should be about 71 degrees. And we still are rounding to 3 decimal places, so 71.527. So the degrees is 71.527 degrees. If you would like to pause and go ahead and find these others, what is the angle that gives you the arc sine of 1 over? That should be about 30 degrees, or 30.301 degrees. And what angle gives you the arctan? That should be 55.628 degrees. Okay, so now this says, now let's think about radians. Now this information, this is basically the same thing that we just went through with degrees. Now we're going to go to radians. And it says, before you punch this in, determine whether the answers will be positive or negative. So I'm going to sketch this really quick, and let's look at radians. If this is 0 radians, this is pi radians, and this is pi over 2 radians, 3 pi over 2 radians. So a pi is about, I'm going to estimate, is about 3. So half of that, let me change colors here so you can see this. This is about 3. So half of that is about 1.5. So if I add that over here, this is about 4.5. And I'm just estimating my pi's. If this is 2.9, then 2.5 is going to fall somewhere over here, right? Let me plug in all students take calculus here. If this is 2.9, it's going to fall over here. And cosecant and sine fall in the same quadrant. Therefore, I think it's probably going to be positive. So I'm going to say positive. 3.89 is going to fall somewhere in this quadrant. And this is secant, so I'm thinking this is probably going to be negative. Tangent, 4.2. I still think it's going to be in this quadrant. And it's tangent, so it's got to be positive. Okay? So let's see what happens here. Cosecant, remember cosecant, I need to do the reciprocal. So cosecant's reciprocal is sine, so I'm just going to say 1 over sine of 2.9. And remember, this is in radians, so go back to your calculator, change it to radians, and plug in 1 over sine of 2.9. And that should give you 4.180. Rounding to 3 decimal places, still. And it was positive, just like we found. Secant of 3.89, the reciprocal is 1 over cosine of 3.89. Plug that into your calculator, still in radian mode. It looks like that gives us negative 1.365. And that gave us a negative 1. Okay, tangent, that's just straightforward. So tangent of 4.2. How about 1.778? And that turned out positive as well. Great. Okay, still in radian mode. Now remember, this one is the one with the arcs. So when you're working with arcs, arcs stand alone, and you're looking for an angle. Okay, so when you're looking for an angle or an arc, standing alone is important. So arc secant is 2.7. So if arc secant is 2.7, then what is arc cosine? Arc cosine is 1 over 2.7. Remember, arcs stand alone. So plugging this in, still in radian mode, you should get 1.193. Remember, this is in radians. Okay, if arc cotangent is 1.7, then what is arc tangent? The arcs stand alone, so this should be 1 over 1.769. So arc tangent is going to give you 0.515. Okay, this can be rewritten as arc sine of 0.627. And be careful, because sine, you can just plug this straight in, no 1 over. So arc sine of 0.627 in radian mode gives you 0.678. Y'all be careful, because I'm going to tell you if it's going to be in radian or degree mode. Okay, this next section is you're just kind of do a combination of what we've been doing, and then I added a little bit more here. So first of all, it says cosine of theta is 0.752. So the first thing I needed to do is I need to figure out what theta is. So I need to solve for theta, and when I do that, my cosine moves to the other side, causing it to be an arc cosine. That tells me that arc cosine is 0.752. So if I want to know what arc cosine is, it looks like I'm going to have to go to my calculator and look this up in degree mode. Okay? So change your calculator back to degree mode and plug in arc cosine of 0.752 and tell me what my theta should be. It looks like your theta ends up being 41.236. What this is what this should be is your reference angle. Okay, this angle right here is what I want it to be, is I want it to fall between 270 and 360. So here is 270, well here's 270 and here's 360. So 41.236 does not fall between these two angles. So I want it to be here, and it's not. So how am I going to get it here? I'm going to get it here by subtracting from 360. So I'm going to take my theta, and I'm going to say 360, and I'm going to subtract 41.236 to find out what angle I should have in order to get it there. So basically, what should you graph in order to get a reference angle of 41.236? So what angle did you graph in order to get that? It looks like your angle should be 318 degrees. Whoops. 0.764. And this is your final answer, because it has to fall between 270 and 360. Okay, let's try another one. Still in degree mode. This says that theta is equal to arc secant of negative 5.127. So theta is equal to arc cosine of 1 over 5.127. Okay, now I'm going to do something that's going to be really easy, and it might be confusing to some of y'all, but if you would take this negative out, anytime you have this problem, if you would just take this negative out of the problem and find the positive of it, you will have a reference angle. If you leave the negative in, you will not have a reference angle. Okay? So drop the negative and find the arc cosine of 1 over 5.127. So plug that in and write down what you get. It should be a reference angle. In fact, do you get 78.753? That is a reference angle. It's between 0 and 90, and it's positive. If you plug in the negative version, which is arc cosine of 1 divided by negative 5.127, you get this number, 101. This is not a reference angle. And for some reason, now you're going to have to go back and find the reference angle. So if you drop the negative every single time, you will get a reference angle. Okay? So it's a little shortcut for you. Now that you have a reference angle, you look at this restriction. So on your graph, I want it to fall between 180 and 270. So I want my angle in here. So what do you have to graph to get a reference angle of 78 degrees? Okay, remember what numbers we never used. We never used 270. Why did we not ever use that? Because your graph never falls on your y-axis. You're always building off of your x. So that means that we need to use only the 180. And how can I use the 180? Well, I can add it to my reference angle and see what we get. That gives me my final answer of 258 degrees, 258.753 degrees. That means this is what I graphed to get a reference angle of 78 degrees. Okay, one more. If I have a cotangent angle of negative 0.625, that means an arc cotangent of negative 0.625. If arc cotangent is that, then arc tangent is 1 over. Now remember I said if you've got a negative in here, drop it. Okay, that's way important. Drop the negative. Okay, plug this into your calculator to find your reference angle. It will always work this way. What's your reference angle here? It should be 57.995. Again, that worked out. It's a reference angle. This right here tells me I want it to be between 90 and 180. Again, we never use 90. Don't even think about using 90. So here is my reference angle. How can I get it to fall between 90 and 180 without using 90? I can take this number and say 180 minus my reference angle. Therefore, my final answer should be 122.005 degrees. This was my original number or angle that I graphed in order to get a reference angle of 57 degrees. Okay, the last 4 problems on your notes are ones that we've already done. I will set up one of them for you. This is non-calculator. It will be non-calculator on your quiz or test as well. Find tangent if sine of theta is 2/5. Draw a random right triangle. Put theta wherever you want. If sine is 2/5, that means sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Find your other side over here by using Pythagorean theorem. Looks like it's going to be root 21. Now find tangent. Tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent. So that means opposite is 2 over adjacent, which is root 21. If you wanted to rationalize, you could. This would be 2 root 21 over 21. No calculator use at all. Okay, if you have questions, please let me know in class.